Hi, ladies, and welcome to this interview with Lorina Schrauger. I think you're really going to learn a lot from what she has to share with you today. So, Lorina, let's go ahead and get right into it. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. And if you could introduce yourself and tell the girls a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, thank you, Christina, for this opportunity. I'm really excited to share with the girls what my story is so far. I'm part of the faculty at Auburn University of Montgomery here in Alabama, where I'm sheltering in place just like everybody else. I just finished grading, so if I looked a little crazed, that's why. We just finished our semester. I'm part of the faculty at the communication department. I teach public speaking and also just the general survey course.
Very cool. So, is this something that you always wanted to do? Like you always thought that you were going to be a teacher, or that you wanted to be a professor, or no, this is something that you just kind of fell into?
A little bit of both. So when I went to college, I thought, wow, okay, this is great. I get to sit and learn and be a totally nerdy girl, right? Like that's the thing. Like I got to read books and got to listen to professors talk about things that I had never heard about. And even now I'm thinking like, wow, my colleagues know so many things about a lot of things that I still don't know about. But I thought it would be far off in the future. I thought, okay, a professor is this person who just sits in their office and studies all day. And part of that is true, but I'm learning that some of it is it's not. It's a lot of prepping and interacting with students. But I I didn't think I would get into it as early as I did, but after my master's, I went back to my alma mater, Biola University in California, and my one of a colleague that I went to school with was teaching there, and she was a coach for the speech and debate team, which I had competed in when I was an undergrad, and I competed in speech and debate since I was 10. And so she said, hey, we need a coach and we also need somebody to teach public speaking. And I thought, okay, that's nice, but my master's is in another area. And she, bless her heart, she believed in me and she said, you're fine, you have a master's, you've been doing this forever, you can teach public speaking. And so it's been about 9-10 years that I've been teaching and coaching. And I have not done anything yet with my other degree, but that will be part of my story, hopefully in the future.
And that's so interesting that you bring that up, because the last interview that I did today, that the girls will get to see with Winter's Cloud, she talks about the fact that a lot of students, when they leave college and everything like that, end up in careers that have nothing to do with their actual degree. And then here I am interviewing somebody who's like, yep, nope, not using the degree, so to speak. So yeah, it's interesting for them to get to see that. So what is your degree in?
My degree is in Middle East and Islamic Studies.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm still waiting to use it. I'm still waiting to use all the Hebrew and Arabic that I've learned, and but they're still, my story isn't over. So that's the exciting part.
Exactly. So in the fact that like you went to college and studied one thing and then ended up being a professor of public speaking, what does it take then to really be a professor at a university? Was there special training or anything like that?
I think where I am now, I know that you need at least a master's degree for almost every subject, unless you have a lot of practical experience. I know in in business and maybe like in kinesiology, exercise science, if you have practical experience, you can teach as an adjunct. But if you want to make it your career, you definitely have to do a lot of school, and that's I don't have my PhD, and so that's one of the things I'm looking at. Is I owe it to my students to have a PhD, but it's also a big commitment. So trying to reach out to my colleagues and saying, okay, what will it take now that I've been teaching and not writing and publishing and doing all that fun stuff to get to a PhD, to do one. So it will take another 5 to 7 or more years of researching and writing, depending on where life takes me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So because I know that if you were to ask somebody on the street, like, what does a professor do? Kind of like what you thought, like, oh, they sit in their office a lot, or, they stand in front of class and they teach or whatever. What are some aspects of your job that maybe some of the girls who are watching would be surprised to learn that that's part of your job?
Ooh. I think the surprising stuff would be kind of the boring aspects.
Yeah.
There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of college administration stuff that I have to be mindful of, because it's not just about the department or my subject, but my boss wants to know how many students are passing, and so I have to keep track of that information for him or her. And the college wants to know, who is struggling, who might need accommodations, and I have to be mindful of that for them. And so there's a lot of interdepartment conversations that have to happen, and the bigger the university is, the more students I deal with, the more interactions have to take place. And so that actually takes up a lot of time, is just the emailing. It sounds so boring, but it is very necessary to keep on track of my students and what my bosses need from me and what the university needs from me.
And I think that's a really good point, is that there's a lot of paperwork that is involved with being a professor, or being a teacher, that has what seems to be, at least, zero to do with actually like the lesson that you were teaching that day. So, and that's something for the ladies who are thinking about, like, I think I'd like to be a teacher or be a professor, to realize that there is that paperwork needing to really be organized, and understand that there's a lot of administrative tasks involved. Like, because I'm a former teacher, the one thing that nobody taught me in any of my education classes, how to do and set up a grade book.
Oh,
Literally. So here's yeah. So I mean, like, so there's some things there, ladies, that you don't really think about, that you kind of take for granted. So this is a course that you're thinking about taking, is really kind of thinking about that, and how organized are you when it comes to those administrative tasks and everything. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
yeah.
What do you think has been the biggest thing that you've struggled with, and how have you handled it?
It's called the imposter syndrome.
Mm.
I don't know if you young women have heard about it, but there's so much scholarship out there, especially about women thinking, do I belong here? Will somebody someday? And I have these nightmares, come into my classroom and say, Lorina Schrauger, you have the wrong degree. Stop teaching and get out of here.
Oh my gosh.
Because that is not my official degree. So if somebody were to say, what is she doing teaching here? And so I have to fight internally that voice that says, you're really, but also colleagues who ask, what's your background? Have you published? And also there's that external pressure of, okay, in order to stay here, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. And I have to go back on what I've done in the past, but also what I'm looking forward to in the future, saying, no, look, I have been a competitor or a coach for close to 25 years of nearly 40 years of life. So I have legit, I can be here. I belong here, because I've seen so many students transformed in my classes and on my teams as a speech and debate coach for collegiate teams. And also I've gone to conferences for my discipline. So I know that at least I'm in touch with some of the literature for this field that I'm in, but also saying, look, I'm still looking forward to taking classes and going to conferences and perhaps doing a PhD in this field. So it's not, again, my story isn't over. To kind of speak to both the internal and the external questioners out there.
And that is something that I think a lot of us struggle with. And it starts young, I think, for a lot of us too, where we wonder, where do we fit in? Do we, I think I know this, but do I really know this kind of thing? And interestingly enough, we actually have a breakout session on the imposter syndrome.
Good.
Yeah. So ladies, be sure to catch that as well. I mean, it really is something that once you're aware that you have these kind of thoughts, you really can start to be mindful of them and really break it down and see, is this really a valid thought? Is this really something that is based in reality versus just something that's based in fear? So absolutely, it's a big struggle. So, and kudos to you for recognizing it and the way that you're handling it, the verifying with yourself that, no, I really do have what it takes to do this. This is where I have that experience and everything. So yeah, it's a daily struggle, I would think, because I know it is in this household. What has been, you touched on it a little bit, but with, transformations that you've seen with your students, but what is either like the funnest or the most rewarding part of your current career?
I always look forward to those students who want to be invisible in my classes. And because it's an applied class where you have to speak, to encourage them through the middle of it when they're still skeptical or may not want to do their work or are shy or whatever, and then see their transformation at the end. I mean, it may not be super dramatic, but I know that the students who want to work on their speaking skills and their organization of thought really do make strides. And it's so fulfilling for me to tell them, remember that recording when it was really rough from class? Look at you now. And this is where I see you going. And so to be almost prophetic for them at the end of the semester saying, okay, I know this isn't your favorite thing, but here's how you can use your voice for good. And you've already done it. So that always gives me goosebumps, even when I'm slogging through 96 or so speeches. But also my favorite memories and things I look forward to are my office hours. And I think I'll touch on office hours at some point. But I'm trying to be the professor that I wanted to have in college. So I went to a small private college that was mostly white, and I was one of a handful of students of color. And I didn't have, and also there weren't a lot of female faculty around.
Yeah.
So I knew that when I got into the positions I did, that I was offering something just by being who I am, something to my students, especially my female students, especially my students of color. And so some of my favorite times is when I'd say, hey, I have office hours at this time during the week. And I would have students, especially the female students, who'd come in and like park themselves on my floor. I mean, there are chairs in my office, but on the floor or wherever I tend to be hanging out, and just talk. They'll talk about their lives. They'll talk about the cute boy in class. They'll talk about stuff they're dealing with their families. And it's been such a privilege to be invited into that space. And I know that I've taught at both my alma mater, which is a little bit more diverse these days, and also another university that's majority white. And I knew I was offering a refuge to students of color and speaking into their lives. And so hopefully they won't have to go through some of the alienation that I felt So that's been very precious to me to be able to offer that. And also as a kind of a first generation college student, my parents were immigrants. My dad was, both my parents were educated, but not in the States. And so trying to navigate the American college system, I know that where I work now, there are a lot of students who are first generation, and there are things that they don't know because they weren't raised in a family that went to college. And so it's a privilege for me to say, look, for whatever reason, I'm here and I can help you because I know what it's like to, even though my parents were educated, they weren't educated here.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of things that you may not know. And so that's been a privilege to be able to do that.
And that's wonderful. I mean, I have to say, first of all, like with the part about helping them navigate college and the school systems and everything, because I think schools here, both like, K through 12, as well as in like the college system, is very different than it is in other countries. And so, yeah, having somebody to help guide you through that process who also gets it because you were in their shoes, I think is a wonderful thing to be able to offer to students. And then, like you were saying, like, when you were in college, being, one of the few females, one of the few females of color at your campus. I mean, it was always, it's always surprising when I had a female professor, number one.
Yeah.
Because I was a science major, and so the majority of my professors were male. So then I know that, like, recognizing that, like having that, like, hey, kind of thing. And then I can't imagine what it's like then to like have that extra layer of, oh my gosh, not only is there a woman in front of my class who's teaching me, but it's a woman who looks like me. Especially when you're in an environment where you don't see yourself a lot. That's got to be now for your students, just huge. Like you said, like a refuge. I mean, it just is, it's incredible what you're being able to offer to your students. So that's amazing. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
So how has been being a professor, especially since you went to college, like you said, you went to college and you've got a degree and everything in something that you're not actually actively using, so how is this different than you imagined it was going to be?
Ooh, yeah, it's been different because, one, I'm not using directly my degree, and yet I am, in that I know what it's like to be a stranger. So my master's, I spent it abroad. I lived in Jerusalem for 2 years, and so I know intimately what it's like to navigate a culture different from my own and a school system that's different from my own. And so I can relate on another level to, say, my international students. Um, and I thought I'd have my PhD by now, but I've learned that life will take you on a wild ride, and it's usually much better than any spreadsheet or plan of action. I mean, by all means, women, plan, but don't be so stuck to that plan, because sometimes the pivots that we are offered sometimes turn out to be much better than what we could have planned for ourselves. So I've gotten to know a discipline that's different from my own, and that opens up some possibilities professionally for me too. So just thinking about, wow, instead of thinking of it as a limitation, thinking about where I am now as opportunities.
Definitely. Like you said, plan. You gotta have your goal. You gotta have your action steps of how you think that you want to reach that goal. But then, yeah, don't hold on to it so tight when things change, because they are going to change. So being able to have that flexibility to roll with those punches, being able to adjust and adapt. I mean, look at the current situation. At the time of this recording, we have got COVID going on right now, and stay-at-home orders, and all of that pivoting that that everybody's having to do. And so, yeah, the ones that are survive and thrive are the ones who actually figure out the way to adjust and adapt. There's more than one way to accomplish your goals for sure. So that's awesome. That's great advice. So ladies, be sure that you scroll below the video here. There's a little bit more of a written interview on Lorina. And then below that is the comment section where you can post any of your questions and comments for her. And she will be sure to come back here and answer those questions that you have. So until then, you guys have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.